All right, guys, in today's video, we're talking about something I wish I'd known a long time ago. The fact is, I spent years on stuff in my golf swing that didn't really matter that much, but this piece that we're going to talk about today matters a whole heck of a lot. Steve and I are going to show you what that is and how you can put this in your swing to hit the ball much better. Let's dive right in. Okay, Steve, so something that I've practiced a lot more with my swing as of probably the past, 5 to 10 years, but something that I didn't spend nearly enough time on for the first 10 or so years of my playing career, which is really all about how the hips work in the golf swing and how it's so important and controls so many other variables. And I really like when I watch you coach, there's sort of a two-part process that I see you do with the players, one key during the backswing and one key during the downswing follow through that really helps with the solidness of contact, the swing from inside, etc. When it comes to the backswing, let's kind of start with that first. What are some of the key pieces we're looking for in terms of how the hips are going to work on the way back before we get to the downswing?
So do your setup.
I've got an 8-iron here, Tacoma iron, no big deal, at my setup. So let's talk backswing here first.
So I would say, to turn your hips, right? The knee flex has to change. And then we would say the right hip goes to the midline and the tailbone goes to the left ankle on the backswing. So those would be the two cues: change the knee flex, right hip to the midline, tailbone to the left ankle. And that's helping to keep the pelvis centered just slightly forward throughout the whole time and space of the backswing. And it helps facilitate more hip turn and tilt, which is what most people really need more of.
And when we're
also helps stop the sway too. Sorry, I forgot to say that.
Better contact, more power. In terms of the legs changing flex, let's just go through the basics of that. What leg does what?
So the left knee would bend down, right? Left knee would bend down, right leg would straighten. That would lower the left hip, raise the right hip. And as that's happening, then that's opening up the hips. So that makes that right hip go to the midline, and then the tailbone would go to the left, towards the left ankle on the backswing.
And so the legs changing flex are really the first thing that initiates and enables the...
That's what allows the hips to turn on a tilted angle, is the knee flex changing.
And so the specifics of, let's say, the right hip first, like if we were looking from face on...
There's two hips, right?
There's two hips. If we were looking at this trail side and the right hip, I think we would say as a checkpoint, obviously the hip's going to work towards the center line. And when you're saying center line, if we could draw a line like up the middle part of my body or relative to where the golf ball is, we're trying to get the hip working towards that behind me. So if we were kind of going from this angle, from down the line, and maybe can you put a club kind of in the middle of my feet there where the midline would be? So I'm trying to get this hip.
The right hip towards where the club is, to the midline.
So the left knee's feeling like it's going down. The right leg is straightening some, and I'm feeling the right hip work towards there.
And then the tailbone. The tailbone would go towards your left ankle as that's happening.
Tailbone towards the left ankle. And one of the keys as I'm doing this too is, notice, guys, as I'm doing that, my head is still staying centered.
Stable, right.
So I see some people do poses with this and they'll look something like this, like, oh, Eric, okay, get my tailbone to my left ankle, and then they're over here.
They'll move both centers forward. And we're advocating just the lower center moving forward.
Just the lower center.
While the upper stays stable.
So as I'm doing this motion, my tailbone's towards my ankle.
Or to get a little bit more detail on it, because we've talked about this too, someone that we've coached, they might move their hip to the midline by P2 by the time the shaft's parallel to the ground. They might move too far forward. If they've been coached by us, for a while. And they've taken the medicine and they've taken the whole bottle.
Right.
We're like, oh, last month you were doing it great. Now you're overdoing it. The sequence of it's off. And I think that's important to note on that.
Totally. The timing and the amount
we're saying the tailbone to the left ankle and the hip to the midline happens at the top of the swing, P4 at the top of the swing, not at P2 or P3.
I'm not getting there at the takeaway.
Correct.
So it's a gradual motion to the top. And just as a macro zoom out look, of all the golfers we coach, right, there's, say, thousands of golf swings we see every month, CogornoGolf.com. There's a direct correlation with how good or bad they are, or handicap level, with where their hips go. It just is what it is. So really with the right hip, meaning like the more the hips go away from the target,
the higher handicap is.
Higher handicap. The more the hips go forward the amount we want, the better the ball striker.
Absolutely.
And for the right hip, if we drew that line down there, I kind of went off on a tangent, but we're looking for that right hip to work inside that line, maybe an inch or two.
Yeah, I would say an inch. A ball
inside. So it's a small motion. Let me hit one with that, Steve, and then I want to kind of come back to the tailbone towards the ankle and put a club in with drill with that.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling here during the backswing, is what you guys should be feeling first things first. The left leg is bending, the trail leg is extending. I'm not locking it out, but it's extending relative to where I started.
Yep.
The tailbone's working towards my left ankle or my right hip towards
the midline.
This midline's the sensation. That's going to keep my hips fairly centered, and my head I'm going to try and keep on center as well.
Yep.
I don't want to do that to the point where my upper hub goes forward, like Steve said.
Yeah.
I also don't want to do it to the point where my upper hub goes to the right too far. I'd like to keep that pretty much on center. And a lot of this, once I started doing this, helped a ton with my contact and my low point. When my hips went too far to the right, a lot more fats and thins for me.
Unless you got it back forward fast enough to the ball.
On the downswing.
Which we don't see happen very often, especially with the mid to high level handicaps.
Totally. Much more difficult. Okay, so let me feel that here first. The right hip to the midline, tailbone to the lead ankle.
Yeah, that was a really nice one.
And that's kind of what I'm looking for there. I mean, that's probably 7-8 yard draw, a little bit to the left. Solid contact.
The solid contact's the key.
Yeah, solid contact and draw shots. The thing I want to avoid is the hips too far this way. Now, before we get to the downswing, Steve, maybe with like a club or something, because I like this as a drill.
Yeah.
If I was going back towards this camera again.
Yep.
This is one I've given a lot of students.
Yeah, put it right against your ankle.
Yeah. And then I'm trying to get the
tailbone over top of that club by the time you get to the top of your swing. That's a good one right there.
And so this is a cool visual for you guys, and we'll put on like the Tommy Fleetwood or another model on the screen for you guys to see this, that the tailbone's working forward as the legs are changing flex, the hips are tilting, but the head is staying on center. The head is staying on center the whole time. That's a key point. And the timing that you mentioned, Steve, it's like we're trying to get to those checkpoints by the top of the backswing.
Correct.
Not
right away.
Yeah.
Like for example, Rory may move an inch to the right by the time the shaft's parallel to the ground, but by the time he gets to the top, he's in line where we want. Hip to the midline, tailbone to the ankle.
Yep. Great point. Okay, I'm going to do one more like that. So kind of a gradual motion there. Right hip to the midline, tailbone to the ankle during the backswing.
Nice, real solid hit again.
Yeah, that's a good one. And so once I get there on the way back.
Yeah, that'd be step number one.
Step one, tailbone to the ankle. And that can really, preset a lot of good things.
Absolutely.
Which is why we do that first. But let's say once I get there, Steve, you also have a nice checkpoint that I've used a lot as well of like, where am I going from here into my finish?
Yep.
So what's kind of the checkpoint? I'm trying to get my hips all forward of that center line.
The hips are moving forward, and obviously there's rotating too in that. But just to why don't we face the back view?
Yep.
So we said that we wanted the right hip to go to the midline, and then swing all the way through. Start again. Swing all the way through in this one. So by the time you finish, the whole hip girdle would be in front of the midline. That'd be like the last checkpoint.
Having the hips all the way through.
Your hips are forward, turned, and tilted, and when you finish, the whole hip girdle is in front of the midline.
So I really like that as like a really simplified 101 version when you're practicing this, and this is where I started, was this stick or line in line with the golf ball, or you can kind of visualize a line up through the middle of your body. And like Steve said, trying to feel the trail hip get to that line behind you on the way back, and then get all of your hips forward of that into the follow through. Why don't I hit 2 or 3 and we'll kind of fine tune the details of that.
Yep.
But the goal is trail hip back to the midline and then all of the hips through. Or feeling the tailbone to the ankle.
Yeah, both work.
On the way back.
Yeah.
And then having the hips all the way through.
You can see how your hips are in front of the that midline that you drew on the ground right there.
And the hips working all the way through on the way through, Steve. Benefits of that: solid contact, shallow angle of attack, more power. I'm going to just answer the question.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, and it obviously it helps. There's a little bit of detail which we're getting to, having the hips when they come through forward, that they're in a side tilt, which was going to be a drill that we were going to talk about in a second.
Yeah, okay. And the one thing I will say before we do the tilting, the rotation piece Steve mentioned, my mantra for this has been like tailbone to the ankle, belt buckle to the target. And when I think belt buckle to the target, that means it's pointed that way,
Yep.
which is rotated, but it's also forward over my ankle.
And in a tilt, which we're going to touch on.
Yeah, like the right hip lower than the left. So I'm feeling tailbone to the ankle, belt buckle to the target, and still up over the ankle. Tailbone to the ankle, belt buckle to the target.
Solid again.
Yeah. So when I get in that finish position, my hips are fully turned, fully pushed forward and raised,
Yep.
But fully pushed forward. So the tilt piece.
Yeah, let's trade for a second on that.
Yeah.
So I would say when most of our coaching, what we do, I don't find too hard of a time to get someone to do the backswing right, change knee flex, move the hip forward.
Yep, agreed.
I don't think that's the difficult part. I think that's fairly easy. The tough part is getting through.
Yep.
And that's where the practice is. I would get an alignment stick. I'd have them set up and put it through their belt loops. And without having a ball there, I'd have them practice, put their hips, put the lower center forward. So the lower center's on top of the ankle already. So the tailbone's already like on top of the ankle.
Yep.
So there's a preset tilt in the pelvis. And then I'd have them practice moving the right hip around underneath of the left.
Yeah.
So their hips are forward and in a side tilt. So they'd practice, they already have the hip slide preset, and they'd practice turning and tilting their pelvis through the ball to get to the follow through, show them how to get to that feel by already having the hips preset.
I like that. I like that little foot stomp too, just for effect there.
Oh,
get a little foot stomp.
Yeah, you like that? I was practicing that one for
I
you.
like that one. So even so, as I'm working through here, I have my hips preset forward as I'm working. So this would be through my belt loops.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm feeling like
the right hip. So when you come around, the right hip moves around under the left. So you'd see the right part of the stick lower than the left. So the hips are forward, turned, and tilted.
Yeah. Okay.
Coming through the ball.
I like that. So tailbone to the ankle, belt buckle to the target, fully turned, trail hip lower than the lead hip.
Correct.
Let's do one more.
That's right.
Belt buckle, or tailbone to the ankle, belt buckle to the target. Yeah, and those are all really solid.
Yeah, nice hit.
And that's kind of the point of this video, guys. Like when I focused, and I used to take lessons when I was younger and focus on my swing and stuff, there's a million things in a golf swing I would focus on that didn't really matter that much. But once I learned how to get my hips moving correctly, starting with changing the leg, flexing the backswing, getting them moving forward a little on the backswing, continuing to move forward as they turn and tilt. For me, the other micro variables of the swing were
a lot of the things fall into place when you get your pelvis working rightly.
That's a good way to say it. A lot of things fall into place. Guys, Steve Saraki, if you guys want to go see him in person, we'll put his link down below. If you want to check out CogornoGolf.com, come take some online lessons. Would love to see you there. Appreciate you guys watching.